Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Ken. I'm back with another video. Today, as you can tell by the title, I'm going to be talking about ETH, Ethereum, and specifically ETH Bitcoin. A few things that have been on my radar recently, and let's get into it. So first of all, Ethereum right now is sitting at $3,700. Today is December 11th, 2024. And obviously, one thing that you'll notice is that Bitcoin obviously is well above its previous all-time high. Bitcoin is currently 45%, 44% above its all-time high, and Ethereum is still struggling to break even these range highs. It's at the top of the range, but currently it is still about 30% away from its previous all-time high in November 2021. Will it break its all-time high? I personally think it will. But, one thing about these crypto cycles is that Bitcoin usually leads the bull market. That's one thing to keep in mind. So that's something that I feel like has been playing out cycle through cycle, which is pretty normal. But that's something to keep in mind because when you look at ETH Bitcoin, the smart play was to hold Bitcoin through all this. Now, let's dissect this a little more. And first of all, I don't want to make this video too long. I just want to go over a few brief things, a few basic things that I've been paying attention to when it comes to ETH Bitcoin. Now, first of all, I own ETH. I want to make that very clear. I own ETH. I hope it goes up. I really do hope it goes up. I own a little bit more ETH than I wanted to the past couple years because I have been holding ETH throughout this whole move down. But I've also been holding Bitcoin, majority Bitcoin. So I am happy that my portfolio was majority Bitcoin because I've been preserving the Satoshi valuation of my portfolio, which is the most important thing to do when you're investing in crypto at the end of the day. You want to, once again, I stress this, you want to preserve the Satoshi valuation of your portfolio. If Bitcoin's going to do better than whatever other crypto coin, then just hold Bitcoin. It doesn't make sense to hold any other alt. But as you can see, ETH Bitcoin has been struggling the past couple years, which is a normal thing. I mean, this has to do with the whole Bitcoin dominance rally. I'm not going to get too in-depth in the Bitcoin dominance in this video, but even the merge, like this move going into the merge, it still didn't even break its high in November 2021, which was something to keep in mind. But right now, ETH Bitcoin is down 57% from the high in November 2021. So ultimately, whatever ETH you've been holding throughout this whole move down, you would have had 57% more of whatever US dollar value you had. You would have had 57% more if you had just held Bitcoin throughout that whole move. That's essentially what it means. Now, when it comes to when is ETH Bitcoin going to bottom, I've been pretty convinced that the bottom would be from 0.03 to 0.04 in that range. Now, as you can see, recently in November, it did put in a low of around 0.0. I don't know if it went below 0.030. I'm not sure if it went to 0.029. Did it? It went to 0.031, so it was close, but that's the low so far. Is that the bottom? I think it could be, and I'm going to explain why. But there is something that I'm a little concerned about, which I'm not 100% sure if it's going to play out, but I'll show you guys that in a second. So let's go back to 2019. All right. This was the 2019 cycle. So as you can see, ETH Bitcoin bottomed in 2019, the week of September 2nd, 2019. This was the bottom, all right? Now, let's look at what happened when it bottomed. This blue line is right now, it's the 50-week SMA. But if we go to the daily time frame, now the blue line turns into the 50-day SMA. All right? So I want you guys to remember that. This is the 50-day SMA. Let's go back to 2019. We're going to have to scroll a little bit. This was the bottom in 2019. Now, it wasn't until ETH Bitcoin got back above its 50-day SMA that marked the bottom, all right? So this was the final move down. It got back above it here, but it wasn't until it broke down from this double bottom, right? ETH Bitcoin put in a double bottom pretty much over here, put in two lows. And then it finally broke down, put in a low, got back above the 50-day SMA, which is the blue line once again. That marked the bottom. It didn't put in a new low over here, so that had marked the bottom. Even when you go back to 2016, actually, this chart doesn't really have the data, so I'm not going to use that example. But yeah, as you can see, it broke down. I'll even draw a trend line. It broke this range. 1, 2, 3 times it hit that trend line. It finally broke down. This marked the low when it got back above the 50-day SMA. Now fast forward to this cycle. That's something I was looking for. I was looking for ETH Bitcoin to get back above its 50-day SMA, which it did. So once again, ETH Bitcoin had pretty much started, it was choppy around here, but it had pretty much started breaking down. And then once it got over here, let's zoom in a little bit. Once it got back over here to 0.034, this is what I was looking for. It had a nice move up. It got back above its 50-day SMA, but then it couldn't hold it. It fell right back below it. Now, once again, it got back above it. So, you know, I don't want to, it might be considered cheating because it already tried getting back above it. It fell below it. And then I started to think, all right, well, that's probably not going to play out the same way as last cycle because it couldn't hold it. It fell below it. So we got to move on. You know, you got to eventually move on. Things don't always play out like they do in the past, which is normal. You know, usually things are going to play out differently. So one thing that I'm looking at now is basically, you know, ETH Bitcoin it got back above its 50-day SMA, but it just got rejected from the bull market support band, which is a combination of the 20-week SMA and the 21-week EMA. So right now it's kind of getting squeezed in between them. What I'm wondering is, what is it going to do from here? Is it going to hold the 50-week SMA and start to break back up again and get above the 20-week SMA? Or is this rejection going to be significant, and is it going to just go back to this prior low or even put in a new low? I hope it doesn't do that. But that's something that I'm definitely looking for. It's kind of getting squeezed in between them. So it's going to make a move soon. Even if it chops around in between here for a little bit, it's going to ultimately decide where it's going to go. That's the main thing I'm looking at right now for ETH Bitcoin. Now, one other thing that I am looking at too is the Fed when it comes to QE. So one really interesting thing that I can pull up is if I go to total assets, right? It was right there, but I'm going to search it up for you guys. So if you guys want to search it up for yourself, it's called total assets, right? I'm going to add this to a new price scale. This is basically the total assets on the Fed balance sheet. All right. That's essentially what it is. I'm not going to go in depth of what that means. You guys can look it up. I'm going to switch back to the weekly time frame. You guys can see that when the Fed started, basically when this chart is going down, we're in QE. When the chart's going up, I'm sorry, I take that back. When this line is going down, when they're rolling assets off their balance sheet, that's QT, quantitative tightening. When they start buying assets again and putting money into the economy, that's QE, essentially, okay? So you can see the exact week that QE started, and I mean the exact week. The timing was crazy. That's when ETH Bitcoin bottomed in 2019. The exact week of September 2nd, 2019. Like, you can literally see that. It's the exact week. After the Fed started QE, you can see total assets started trending up. And then it really skyrocketed in March of 2020, which made sense. But, I mean, look at how much it skyrocketed. I mean, that's a significant increase. Right? So you can see that ETH Bitcoin bottomed the exact week when QE started. Now, QE is a little bit different from when the Fed starts cutting rates, because as you can see now, fast forward to this cycle, the Fed started cutting rates September 2024, but QT has still been going on. They've still been rolling assets off their balance sheet. So the question is now, we got a Fed meeting coming up in a couple weeks, all right? Not a couple weeks, I'm sorry, a couple days. I believe December 18th, we got a Fed meeting coming up. It's going to be on a Wednesday. Yeah, so a week from today, we got a Fed meeting coming up. Now, they're probably going to drop interest rates again by 25 basis points, which is expected, but they have to announce if they're going to start QE or if they're going to be continuing QT. I wouldn't be surprised if next week they start QE and then boom, that's when ETH Bitcoin bottoms. That's definitely a possible scenario that I can see playing out. And the timing would still be pretty accurate. You know, like let's say they start QE next week and this ended up being the low, November 18th. I mean, it's a month off, but the timing is still pretty similar. I mean, I'm even surprised of how spot on the timing was last cycle. But that's definitely a scenario that I can see playing out. And just to overlay interest rates, because I'm just curious, let's do I don't know, I think this is the yeah, so as you guys can see, if we go to 2019, ETH Bitcoin bottomed not right when the Fed started cutting interest rates, but when they had already made a little bit of progress cutting. That's something to keep in mind also. It actually wasn't until the Fed started cutting, that's when ETH Bitcoin actually broke down. If we go to this cycle. And also another thing too is that they started QE midway through their cuts, which is interesting too. Not really midway, but when they had already started making a little bit of progress. And as you can see too, the purple line is interest rates. If you guys don't know. If we go to this cycle, yeah, as you can see, the Fed had already started cutting, but if it plays out the same, they might be doing the same thing where they start QE a little bit after they actually start cutting the rates. So this is something that can definitely play out the same. I don't want to say the same, but at least a little bit similar. You know, that's something definitely that I'm watching out for. And one final thing that I'll show you guys before I wrap this video up is that if you take a look at the total assets chart, one thing to keep in mind is like this, you know, they had started total assets had started increasing at a normal pace, I should say, but it wasn't until like February, March 2020 that it really skyrocketed because of COVID. That's something to keep in mind. So this spike up is pretty much because of COVID. You guys should keep that in mind. And then it kind of gets onto a more like normal slope, you know. Ever since it's been going down though, you can see that it's getting to that same level that it was in June of 2020. So that's also another reason why they might start QE here, because they might not want it to go below this prior level from June of 2020. I could be wrong about that, but if they do start QE right here, it would be interesting that it's basically at the same previous level from June of 2020. That's something that I noticed too. But we're just going to have to see what plays out. Like I said, the next Fed meeting is a week from today. I'm shooting this video on Wednesday, December 11th. Like I said, Ethereum's at $3,700. Bitcoin is playing around at 100K. So we're just going to have to see what happens. But if you guys have any questions or thoughts, let me know in the comment section below. If you guys are new, make sure to like, subscribe. Check out my other videos too. I've been posting a video every day in December. And, you know, I don't really make crypto videos like this. But if you guys want more videos like this, let me know in the comment section below. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.